Hello guys, Kyo here. So the hype has finally become reality. Black Tower or Skybreak Spire is releasing on February 8th and everyone is prepping to gear up for the raid. So far there only has been English text guides and all the other video guides are in Chinese, Japanese, Korean or some other Asian language. And no, I'm not racist, I'm Asian too, don't worry. Anyways, a disclaimer. Any pictures or videos I use in this video, I will be properly crediting the original owners of course, but I don't think I will use any videos for this guide to avoid copyright issues. Okay, welcome to Kyo's Grand Black Tower Guide. This video will cover the roles and mechanics of the first boss. Alright, so to start off, I'd like to point out that I have not played on any servers aside from North America. My only experience from this is from watching and reading guides like most of us. We won't really know what's going to happen until, well, we run it ourselves. Okay, so the first boss is called Venomsky. He has 252,700,000 HP and a 10-minute and 10-second enrage timer. He's similar to the boss in the other 24-man raid we're getting, which is Dawn of Candivar. His basic attack rotations are 2 head swipes, and then a head slam or tongue swipe, which is unblockable, or a jump, and finally a tail slam or 3 tail swipes, which are CC'able. When he does his 3 tail swipes, he should be knocked down to prevent him from dealing massive damage to the raid group. Cat pin is highly preferred, but you can also grab or phantom grip. This is not recommended though, because there is a chance of moving the boss and moving him is very risky and can cause a wipe for the group. The following diagrams show where the adds will spawn at a certain HP threshold. I will be using a clock as a guide to name positions where they will spawn. These adds need to be quad CC'd, which means for example stunned 4 times, knocked down 4 times, dazed 4 times, whatever. Whenever Venom Drake hits these thresholds, he will roar, becoming invulnerable and then jump to the center as the adds spawn. If these adds don't get CC'd immediately, there will be a wipe. At 90%, there will only be 4 adds. Each add will be at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. At 60%, there will be 5 adds at 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 11 o'clock. And finally, at 30%, there will be 6 adds at 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. I highly recommend placing each person who is CCing in their respectable positions beforehand, so they know where they will have to be to CC. Now let's finally move on to what the group composition should look like. Obviously there's 4 parties in an alliance. The raid group should consist of 4 warlocks, 1 for each party, 3 tanks, BM or KFM, 4 blue buffs, 1 for each party as well, 4 plus party iframes, such as a Sin, Summoner, Force Master, Blade Master, and Blade Dancer. But note, avoid putting multiple iframes that share a global cooldown, just like Blade Master's HM block and Blade Dancer's Maelstrom. And finally, 4 plus healers for each party, Summoner or Soul Fighter. There are mainly 2 roles for this first boss. One is obviously the tank, and the second role is the buff transporter. I'll get into what the buff transporter does in a bit. Now, let's talk about when we engage the boss. Once the tank goes in, a small egg will spawn at 7 o'clock and a large egg at 1 o'clock. The tank should be tanking at the 7 o'clock position, and the group should move towards the 1 o'clock position. The small egg is preserved mainly for the tank. No one, and I mean no one else, should hit it. It will give the tank a 200% AP buff and poison immunity for 30 seconds. The tank should either use a ranged attack on the egg or move to the egg, break it, and then dash immediately back to the boss during a long attack animation coming from the boss. Now for the large egg. Here's where the buff transporter comes in. One person will be hitting the large egg. When they hit the egg, they will get a 5-second buff and an indicator they're able to see. When that 5-second buff expires, a red AoE will appear around them where the indicator was. Thank you to bns-academy for the pictures. The buff transporter brings this red AoE to the group. Everyone that was in the AoE when it spawned will have poison removed, and each person will be randomly given either a red buff or a blue buff. If you send in the AoE that your buff matches, you will get a 100% boost in AP, or double your AP. If you stand in the AoE that your buff does not match, you will get 50% less AP. If you're in the AoE with no buffs, nothing happens. After 15 seconds, red buffs will turn into blue buffs, and blue buffs will turn into one poison stack, and poison will resume stacking. The red AoE will also turn into a blue AoE after 15 seconds. So the buff transporter carries a lot of weight. They have to have good timing when it comes to when they have to obtain the buff. If the buff transporter gets the red buff, they should hit the egg where there is 5 seconds left on their blue buff. Now, some of you may be wondering, wait, they just had the red buff though. Don't forget that the red buff will turn into a blue buff after 15 seconds, and then the blue buff will turn into one poison stack. If the transporter gets the blue buff, they should hit the egg when they reach 5 poison stacks, and one poison stack is every 2 seconds. Do you guys remember those candy bar potions you sometimes get from killing the mobs for key dailies? This is where they come in. Around to 7 to 8 stacks, it is generally a good idea to drink one. Just remember though, if you have no poison stacks on you when the buff is applied, you instantly die. Alright, so for the flower phase, the boss will summon flowers at 80%, 50% and 20% HP thresholds. At 80 and 50%, the boss will either jump to the 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock or 8 o'clock positions. Once the tank notices that the boss is jumping, they should start kiting backwards towards the edge of the 7 o'clock position. The boss would then spit 3 AoEs at the tank, and then the tank would want to kite them around to the edge as I said earlier. After he spits those 3 AoEs, the boss will then summon flowers around him. It will look something like this. The group will have to get the buff transporter to give them the red buff, and those with the red buff have to start walking over these flowers, as the red buff is the only way to cleanse these flowers. The red buff will turn the flowers red, and the flowers will then start damaging him, but those with the red buff will have the buff removed and they will start stacking poison again. After the flowers have been summoned, the boss will then spit 4 more AoEs, and the tank will have to kite them around the edge again. The red buffs are the only way to remove these flowers. The buff transporter should stall the buff a bit when the boss starts his phase. It takes about 20 seconds from when the boss roars to when the flowers spawn. At 20%, the boss will not jump or roar. Instead, the flowers will start to constantly spawn. The buff transport interval should be shortened to 15 seconds instead of 30 seconds, as people with the red buff should be turning flowers red. The buff should also be delayed just before 20%, so the flowers are turned red as soon as possible. You are probably confused by what I mean when the interval should be shortened. Remember when I said that the red buff will turn into a blue buff after 15 seconds along with the red AoE? Those who were initially chosen as red buff can stay in the AoE for 30 seconds, since the red and blue buff equally last 15 seconds along with the AoE. That means that once the red AoE's 15 seconds is up, the buff transporter should be making another red AoE for the party to continue removing flowers after they remove the flowers and gain poison stacks again. That should cover basically all of the mechanics. Let's start from the very beginning, setting up ourselves as if we were in the fight. The buff transporter will do their job breaking the buffs to the group, while the tank breaks their egg whenever they get the chance to. The raid group will DPS the boss until 90%. At 90%, the boss will roar and jump to the center. He will summon 4 adds and all adds need to be quad CC'd or else there will be a wipe. After that phase is over, it's back to DPS until 80%. At 80%, the boss will spit his 3 poison AoEs at the tank, then summon flowers, and then spit 4 more AoEs. Afterwards, the group resumes DPS until 60%. At 60%, the boss will roar and jump back to the center, summoning 5 adds this time that need to be quad CC'd again, or else there will be a wipe. After the adds have been CC'd, the group resumes DPS until 50%. At 50%, the boss will spit his 3 AoEs at the tank again, summon flowers, and then spit 4 more AoEs. Once the flowers have been removed, the group resumes DPS until 30%. At 30%, the boss will summon 6 adds that need to be quad CC'd. Once that's taken care of, the group resumes DPS until 20%, where the group will have to constantly remove flowers at the same time DPS until the boss is dead. I hope this first boss guide for Black Tower proves helpful for everyone preparing. I will be making guides for next bosses, but they won't maintain an overall perspective of each role like this one. It will be more focused on the Warlock perspective and what they will be doing. I will be streaming all day when the patch releases on February 8th, and will be doing the Black Tower raid at 8 PM Eastern Time. Make sure to tune in my stream here, and also don't forget to subscribe. Anyways, thanks for watching guys. Keo out. Peace.